We have been discussing the idea that a parasite exists and rules our minds. How can we demonstrate to our readership that this parasite exists and that the idea of mental infection is not delusional? Like an infection, the mental parasite would be detected by its symptoms. Malaria, for instance, produces violent symptoms caused by a foreign entity that invades the body. To think clearly about the parasites, we must consider that certain behavior and certain forms of thinking, in particular religious ideologies, would be symptomatic of an infection or foreign invasion of the human mind. What is the nature and the origin of this parasite? Is it interdimensional intelligence? Is it possible that it takes an organic form? According to the Gnostics, the parasites, or Archons as they called them, originate with the earliest phase of the formation of the solar system, before the Earth coalesced as a planetary organism. Their habitat is the solar system, exclusive of the Earth, Moon, and Sun. They are inorganic forms with intelligence of an electrical nature, cyborgs, as we would say. The Gnostic texts, Nag Hammadi codices, describe the Aeons and the Archons. To explain it simply to our readership, what are the differences between the Aeons and the Archons? In Gnostic cosmology, Aeons or Eons are gods, deities, and divinities. They are not creator gods or point entities, however. They are rather like massive, alive, aware currents. They are the forces that form the central core of the galaxy we inhabit, the Pleroma. Archons are an anomalous species of inorganic beings that arise outside the Pleroma, in the limbs or arms of the galaxy. They are called Archons from Greek arche, elementary from the beginning, because they arise first, before the earth is formed. Their bodies are formed of elementary matter, quantum fields, in a pre-organic state. Do you think the flyers described by Castaneda and the Archons of the Gnostics are really the same thing? Yes, I am convinced they are the same. What was the personal event that happened in your life that focused your attention on the idea that a parasite like the Archons, the flyers, or some kind of extraterrestrial entities affect our perception of the universe? The sense that something distorts our perception has come to me gradually, not triggered by a specific personal event. However, I did have remarkable occult experiences from the age of 4, such as lucid dreams in which I encountered magical beings who came to assist or teach me, as well as others being who attacked me. I have been directly aware of both kinds of interventions since that age. Do you think that extraterrestrial beings like the Anunnaki or the Greys are the incarnations of this parasite, or that these alien beings are more shadowed or possessed than us by this parasite, this predatory intelligence? I just follow the Gnostic teachings that the primary predatory intelligence facing humanity is the Archontis. I believe that they are identical with the Anunnaki and the modern Greys. The Gnostics warned us about this predatory creature. They described the Archons and told us how we can be affected by them. Did the Archons create us? What is the legacy they gave us? The Gnostics taught that the Archons did not create us, but they are caught in a delusion, and they think they are our creators. One of their main goals is to convince us that they created us. In effect, to get us to think as they do. As far as I know, there is no legacy we have received from the Archon extraterrestrials. They are inferior to us in will and intelligence, though superior in navigational technology for traveling among the planets, in telepathy, and techniques of imitation, virtual reality. I believe that the Archons are identical with the Watchers of Enoch, entities who are credited with teaching metalworking and cosmetic adornments to humanity. If the Gnostics were correct, the Archon ETs attempt to take credit for imparting certain skills like this to humanity, but the claim is false, I believe. We ourselves have discovered these skills, but forgotten how, so we are susceptible to accept the explanation of a foreign or alien intervention. Do you believe that the Archons can take an organic form to exist? Do you believe, for instance, that the Archons and the Greys are the same thing? In my understanding, the Archons are an inorganic species, perhaps silicon and mercury, as Kerner suggests. The Greys are cyborgs, resembling human form, or, To be precise, the form of a premature fetus. Gnostic texts describe the production of the Archon species as an abortion, hence the form of a premature human body. The Archons are only body, they have no soul. Yes, I am convinced that the Gnostic Archons are identical with the modern Greys of the embryonic type. Whitley Strieber observed that the Grey ETs exhibit a high degree of neoteny, that is, they have the form of an entity that is not fully formed when it is born. To Gnostics, the living Jesus indicated a spiritual force that does not die, hence it could not be a real human person. Jesus Christ in the New Testament says things that would never have been said by a Gnostic initiate. His words and acts are inconsistent with an illumined teacher from the mysteries. The Gnostic Christos is not the Christ, the only begotten Son, in the theology of John and Paul. The Gnostic Christos is an Aeon, a divine force that does not assume human form. Gnostics denied the incarnation. In their view, no human person has the privilege to incarnate an Aeon, a divinity. People often compare the importance of the discovery of the Nag Hammadi texts with the Dead Sea Scrolls. As far as you know, can we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls the same warning about the Archon, about the facts that the creation of the universe is a mistake contained in the NHC? Who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls and who wrote the NHC? Were they enemies? Great questions. This connection between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the NHC is crucial. To my knowledge, no scholar has indicated the cross-reference between these ancient texts, but they do exist. Let me elaborate. The Dead Sea Scrolls do not warn us about the Archons because they were written by an extremist sect who were manipulated by the Archons. The Zadokine, or righteous ones of the Dead Sea, was a violent, apocalyptic sect dedicated to celestial beings called the Kenoshim, who appeared to them in shining chariots. Some Dead Sea texts, notably 4Q405 in the Sabbath Songs, describe the appearance and movement of flying saucer-type UFOs exactly as they are described in modern sightings. In short, I am convinced that the sect at Qumran was an apocalyptic cult of UFO contactees like the suicide cult Heaven's Gate. South of Qumran was a Gnostic encampment of a group called the Archontics, who took this name, I believe, because it was their mission to spy upon the Archons who were controlling the Zadokine. In one Gnostic text, the Apocalypse of James 21:15, the revealer says, Jerusalem is the dwelling place of many Archons. I am certain that many Gnostics from the mystery temples in the Near East were aware of the intrusion of the Archons. They detected the aliens and their effect, a mental or psychic infection that took the form of religious madness. Jerusalem was highly infected, as was Qumran. The NHC does not say that the universe is a mistake. It says that the world system we inhabit, our planetary system, is an anomaly due to the presence of the Archons who impinge upon life on Earth. Gnostic cosmology explains the emergence of the Archons at the cosmic level, so Gnostics understood the origin and behavior of these alien entities. The Dead Sea sectarians were completely duped by the Archons, whom they saw as celestial angels. They believed that the Archon leader, Jehovah, was their creator god. Gnostics viewed these beliefs as religious madness due to the ideological virus spread by the Archons. Several passages in the Dead Sea Scrolls refer directly to Gnostics who were considered to be arch-enemies of the Zadokine. To my knowledge, no scholar has pointed out that the Dead Sea cult targeted the Gnostics in this manner. The Zadokine wanted to completely destroy the Gnostics. If my theory is correct, we can understand why. One more point. The Nag Hammadi codices were discovered in December 1945, but their importance was not recognized until the summer of 1947, exactly when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Readers will of course realize that the summer of 1947 was the time of Kenneth Arnold's UFO sightings of flying saucers and the Roswell incident. It is amazing that ancient materials written by an ET/UFO cult, as well as other materials exposing the nature of that cult, resurfaced at the exact moment of 1947 wave and the Roswell incident. This is truly, in quotation, cosmic coincidence. Anthropologists like Michael Harner or Carlos Castaneda gave the same kind of description of a mysterious creature. Harner saw in a vision in Manicharis a black creature, a mix between a whale and a reptile, pterodactyl. These creatures need to hide themselves and are considered by the Indians of Amazonia to be the source of all life on Earth. Castaneda describes the flyers as horrible black and huge fishy creatures that eat the consciousness of mankind. Can we compare those creatures? Do you think they have the same nature? No, I don't find this comparison to be valid. The vision of the Amazonian Indians is probably an ancestral memory of the origins of human life. Gnostic teachings on this matter are similar to those of the indigenous peoples who claim that the first people came from the skies. This is called panspermia in modern science, the seeding of the human species on Earth from an extraterrestrial source. In the imagination of the native peoples, like those who initiated Harner, the seeds of life arrive in huge canoes, worms, dragons, and other such forms. This is a way to visualize panspermia. DNA itself can be visualized as a coiling serpent. Castaneda's description of the flyers refers to a totally different phenomenon, a type of predatory being that is bat-like or dragon-like. Throughout history, the dragon has been viewed as a benign angelic figure, even a type of superior consciousness, but the reptilian type of the Archons described by Gnostics is different. We must exert some imagination and distinguish the universal dragon archetype from the specific form of the predatory alien, the reptilian Archon, called Draconic, in the NHC. Why do you compare the Gnostic knowledge to shamanism? Did the Gnostics engage in research about cognition and other ways to perceive reality? Did they use hallucinogenic substances like shamans use ayahuasca, peyote, or psilocybin? Don Juan says that sorcery, shamanism, is about the shifting the parameters of perception. I believe the Gnostics were masters of this practice. They were heirs to a long tradition of shamanism deriving from the indigenous peoples of Europe and Asia going back to Paleolithic times. In Gnosis, the path of heightened perception, to use Castaneda's term, we see a sophisticated method of shamanism. A kind of high-tech shamanism, if you will. Techniques of paranormal perception were taught and transmitted in the mystery schools founded and led by Gnostikoi, those who know about divine or supernatural matters. According to the Wasson thesis, the ritual use of psychoactive plants was the basis of all genuine religion on Earth. Gordon Wasson and Albert Hofmann, the Swiss chemist who discovered LSD, proposed that the kykeon, the sacred potion drunk at the Eleusinian Mysteries, was a mixture of ergo fungus, the organic basis of LSD, hence it was a psychedelic potion. Much solid research has been done that supports this idea. Also, the use of psychoactive mushrooms in the Mysteries has also been proposed based on good research. It is now certain that ancient shamanic cults, such as the Mysteries, used psychoactive plants to achieve temporary ego death and shift the parameters of perception. I believe that the Gnostics were deeply skilled in the use of psychoactive plants, including mushrooms. However, I have not found any direct evidence of this in the Nag Hammadi Codex material. Let's consider a passage from the first apocalypse of James, a revelation dialogue in which an unnamed teacher, the Lord or Master, confers secret knowledge upon a Gnostic named James. The Master said, "James, behold, I shall reveal to you the path of your redemption. Whenever you are seized and you undergo death pangs, mortal fear, a multitude of Archons may turn on you, thinking they can capture you, and in particular 3 of them will seize you. Those who pose as toll collectors. Not only do they demand toll, but they take away souls by theft. Now, when you come under their power, one of them, who is the overseer, will say to you, 'Who are you, and where are you from?' You are then to say to him, 'I am a child of humanity, and I am from the source.' He will then say to you, 'What sort of child are you, and to what source do you belong?' You are then to say to him, 'I am from the pre-existent source, and I am the offspring of the source.' Then he will say to you, 'Why were you sent out from the source?' Then you are to say to him, 'I came from the pre-existent one, so that I might behold those of my kind and those who are alien.' And he will say to you, 'What are these alien beings?' You are to say to him, 'They are not entirely alien, for they are from the fallen Sophia Achamoth, the female divinity who produced them when she brought the human race down from the source, the realm of the pre-existent one. So they are not entirely alien, but they are our kin. They are indeed so, because she who is their matrix, Sophia Achamoth, is from the source. At the same time, they are alien because Sophia did not combine with her like in the source, her divine male counterpart, when she produced them. When he also says to you, "Where will you go now?" you are to say to him, "To the place whence I came, the source, there shall I return." And if you respond in this manner, you will escape their attacks. Considerable information is packed into this exchange. The resemblance to contemporary reports of close encounters is undeniable. The Archons induce a state of mortal panic. They often appear in threes. They perform abductions (take away souls by theft). These details present a striking match to contemporary ET/UFO lore, but an equally striking departure from the current literature. The Gnostic teacher gives explicit instructions on how to face the alien entities. The vast amount of testimony on the ET/UFO phenomenon available today presents almost nothing on the defense against alien intrusion. Contactees and abductees are passive witnesses, overwhelmed and overpowered by the aliens, but Gnostic writings not only describe such encounters, they also prescribe defensive action. The Master offers cogent counsel for keeping the Archons in their place. Gnosis is a remembering of our origins. The student is instructed to remember the cosmic birthright of humankind, and to affirm its direct link to the Pleroma, the source. Specifically, the student is taught to recall and repeat the key episode in Gnostic mythology, the fall of the Aeons Sophia, and thus effectuate a defense against the Archons. By recounting the myth of their origins, the student demonstrates initiated knowledge of the origin and identity of the entities she is facing. Intentional recall of cosmic matters disempowers the Archons. This, at least, is a clear inference from the passage above. The tactic of remembrance accords closely with indigenous wisdom. Consider, for instance, the saying of the Naki, a Tibetan people of southeastern China. One must relate the origin of the medicine, otherwise it cannot work its magic. Shamans heal, not only by their knowledge of the properties of plants, but also by their recounting of the story of the plant. Likewise, Gnostics defeated the Archons with the medicine (occult power) of mythological recall. The Coptic materials become increasingly relevant as we realize they do not merely present pedantic or recondite commentaries on a dead religion, but vital insights on the timeless spiritual dilemmas of humanity, insights as valid today as they were 2,000 years ago. Had Muhammad Ali not broken open the jar, we would not be able to hear these things. In the truest sense of the word, these things are dynamite. One might have imagined headlines throughout the world. But there were no such headlines, even in the tabloids. It took many years before the codexes were translated, and still, even today, no scholar will allow these rare Coptic codices contain reliable accounts of encounters with ET-like entities. In another passage of the first apocalypse of James, the Master refers to those people who exist as the type of the Archons. Gnostics were not only alert to the intrusion of the Archons, they were also acutely aware of the possibility of humans becoming totally archontized. This threat appears to have emerged in a particularly alarming way in that era to which Philip K. Dick often refers, the 1st century of the Common Era, when the incarnation of Christ is said to have occurred according to Christian belief. Both the time and the place where archontic moldings of human character set in strongly are specified in the Nag Hammadi texts. In the Gnostic view of the human condition, Dick assumed that the spiritual life of humanity was arrested at that moment. It is as if the behavior of those who exist as a type of the Archons locked into place in that era and came to dominate all subsequent centuries until the moment in 1945 when the Nag Hammadi texts were discovered. In a close parallel to Philip K. Dick's vision of the Empire, William Reich saw the rise of a similar syndrome, which he characterized as the mechanico-mystical complex. See the mass psychology of fascism. Its signature is authoritarian ideology, the mindset of fascism and patriarchal domination. Significantly, archon was the common term for governor or authority in Roman times. In some translations of the Coptic materials, archon, plural archontoi, is rendered as the authorities. Reich's analysis of what I propose to call the mystico-fascist complex focuses on National Socialism, the Nazi movement, which he experienced firsthand, but the mass psychology of fascism contains ample references to Catholicism and the Holy Roman Empire, the millennial ancestor of the mystico-fascist program. In allusion to the fascist ideology of the authorities, Philip K. Dick wrote, "The empire is the institution, the codification of derangement. It is insane and imposes its insanity on us by violence, since its nature is a violent one." This is purely a Gnostic insight, compatible with passages in the NHC and deeply resonant with Reich's views on Massenpsychosis of Roman Christianity. It might be argued that the Nazis were not Christians, but in fact Hitler imagined himself as a Grail Knight, modeled after Wagner's Parsifal, and the savior complex of Judeo-Christian belief is wholly transposed into Nazi racial ideology, hence the Aryan Christ identified, and to some degree embraced by C.G. Jung. The Holy Reich, published in 2004 by Richard Stegman Gall, professor of history at Kent State University in the USA, argued that Hitler was sincere in calling himself a Christian, and reveals to what extent Christian ideology was embraced by the Nazi Party and contributed to the advancement of their causes. Wilhelm Reich warned that since the breakdown of the pre-Christian ethos of earth-oriented paganism, the biological core of humanity has been without social representation. This is a staggering observation, to say the least. The authorities exhibit the behavior of spiritual zombies, people who exemplify a baffling mix of mystical and militaristic fixations. What I have called behavioral cloning is widely evident in both militaristic and mystical behavior, such as we see today in neocon religious realpolitik, although it is often embodied in the mass conformity of global consumerism and the rites of technophilia. According to Reich, these fixations, focused on the master fixation on a transcendent God beyond the earth, arise from the repression and displacement of somatic sensations, especially sexual/genital feelings. Philip K. Dick agreed with Reich in observing that the mystico-fascist ideology grows like armor around people who adopt these fixations, either through indoctrination or intimidation, in parentheses and quotations, conversion. The mystico-fascist ideology operates like a virus, imposing its form on its enemies, thereby it becomes its enemies. The ideology of the authorities can infect even those who resist it, hence it turns humanity against itself. But it would appear that some Gnostics were immune to the infection, not by accident, but due to their deliberate practice of orgiastic sexual techniques to produce immunity, and due in equal measure to their explicit teachings on the Archons and how to resist them, as seen in the above passage from the first Apocalypse of James. Gnostic observers on the ground when Christianity arose saw salvationist ideology exactly the way Philip K. Dick did, as a virus, an ideological virus to be precise. Pagan intellectuals of the day even used that term for the fanaticism of the converts. Gnostics saw the tyranny of belief, of metaphysical fantasies that underwrite militaristic agendas. In the rise of early Christianity, we can only imagine what they would see today in the political religiosity of the American right.